Before we begin watching the virtual playground inspection video, let's begin by reviewing the preparations for a playground inspection conducted by a certified playground safety inspector. When entering the play area, check for signs and labels identified by the ASTM F1487 standard and the CPSC guidelines. Playground signage should be placed at the defined entrance to the playground. If there is no distinct point of entry to the play area, the signs are recommended to be placed in a conspicuous location near the play area, but not within the use zone of the equipment. Accessible routes of travel to accessible components can be observed as well. Reminder, refer to the ADA 2010 Accessibility Standard for details on accessibility. The CPSI should have an inspection kit containing a torso and head probe, 4 protrusion gauges, a fish wedge probe, 3 neoprene rods 3/16, 5/16, and 5/8 inch in diameter, 1/8 inch drill bit or key stock, ASTM F1487 and any other ASTM documents related to the playground you are inspecting, and the CPSC guidelines. It is also recommended to have the following in your inspection kit: blank audit inspection form, site plans, small hand shovel, 100-foot tape measure, caliper to measure outside diameter of a pipe, feeler gauge to check S-hooks, and a 6-foot self-supporting ladder. As in most playground inspections, it is recommended to check one hazard at a time. Before the inspector begins inspecting the equipment, take time to verify compliance with use zones beneath and immediately adjacent to the play structures. Fall heights of equipment can also be checked at this time. If the owner-operator has requested drop testing, the inspector must adhere to the field testing protocol in ASTM F3313. We will start with completely bounded rigid openings. The inspector will use the head and torso probe to check for potential head entrapments after a feet-first entry into an opening. Reminder, if the torso probe goes through the opening is considered accessible to a child. If the head probe will not penetrate the opening is considered a head entrapment hazard. The inspector will now check all partially bounded rigid openings on the structure. The fish or wedge probe has an A and B portion to the probe. The A portion is used to determine if a partially bounded opening is accessible by a preschool age child. The B portion is used to determine if the thickness of the enclosing sides or location of the opening prevents the opening from being a hazard. The inspector now checks projections that may be protrusion hazards and potentially even entanglements. The inspector will use 3 projection gauges to identify projections that have the potential of being protrusion hazards on the structure. Reminder, use the 1/8 inch washer to check for suspended components, such as swings. If the inspector observes any projections that could potentially be an entanglement, they will check the projection using the 1/8 inch washer, key stock, or drill bit. Before completing the inspection, The inspector will also check any crushing shear points and loose hardware on connecting devices. The inspector should record all findings on site, identifying all non-compliant conditions observed during the inspection. If any Priority 1 hazards were identified during the inspection, contact the owner or operator as soon as possible. Now, let's take a few minutes to recap some of the material covered during the CPSI program by taking a virtual playground inspection tour.
Welcome to the National Recreation and Parks Association Virtual Playground Inspection. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, there are more than 200,000 injuries annually on public playgrounds across the country that require emergency room treatment. To reduce the number of injuries on playgrounds, we recommend periodic inspections of your play structures, including maintaining impact attenuation surfacing within the use zone of each play equipment. The owner or operator should establish and maintain detailed installation, assembly, inspection, maintenance, and repair records for each playground equipment area. Along with helping to promote children's development, a quality inspection program provides many positive outcomes. To ensure your playground is safe for children, an inspector should identify hazards on playgrounds and rank the hazards according to the injury potential from the CPSC guidelines and the ASTM F1487 standard. Apply safe maintenance practices on equipment. Identify surfacing types and proper maintenance procedures for those surfaces. Establish proper record-keeping practices. Let's begin with safe practices on equipment and identifying hazards. There are 5 major playground hazards to look for while inspecting a playground. Number 1 is entanglements. Entanglements happen when the user's clothes or something around their neck becomes caught or entwined on a component of playground equipment. This is the number 1 cause of death and serious debilitating injury. Remember the 3 exception and condition rules. Slide non-entanglement zone, more than 2 threads on an exposed bolt, bolt that increases in size from its initial surface. The 3 conditions. Projection must fit within a projection test gauge. Projection must project vertically above the horizontal plane. Projection must have perpendicular size, extending greater than 1/8 inch from its initial surface. Our next hazard to discuss is falls. Falls are the number 1 cause of injury on a playground and the number 2 causes of death on a playground. This inspector has identified areas to inspect that may be fall hazards. Protrusions are a projection that can spike, pierce, or stab a child, enter an eye socket, or bruise an internal organ. Remember, there are 4 gauges used to test for potential protrusions. Head and neck entrapment. Entrapment may cause possible strangulation due to head and/or neck entrapment after a feet-first entry into a completely bounded opening that is totally enclosed on all sides. Also, remember to test partially bounded openings. Crush and shear. Common crush and shear points can occur on components that are in motion, like seesaws and moving bridge planks. These hazards may crush a child's finger or cause amputation. Another area of concern on playgrounds are sharp edges. Sharp points, corners, or edges on any part of the playground or play equipment may cut or puncture a child's skin. Playground equipment comes in many different materials. Wood should be either naturally rot and insect resistant or should be treated to avoid such deterioration. In maintaining these playgrounds, the use of toxins such as creosote, pentachlorophenol, tributyltin oxide, and chromated copper arsenate should be avoided. Metal corrosion can begin with surface rust. Advanced corrosion causes metal to become very thin and brittle, creating sharp edges and holes. Plastics that experience ultraviolet UV degradation should be protected against UV light. Plastics should be made from materials that have UV inhibitors. Remember, if your playground equipment was installed before 1978, check for peeling or flaking lead-based paint. Continue with the inspection by examining the hardware and fasteners. Hardware and fasteners should not loosen or be removable without the use of tools. If exposed to the user, the hardware and fasteners should be smooth and not likely to cause a laceration, penetration, or entanglement hazard. Hardware and fasteners should be corrosion resistant and be selected to minimize corrosion of the materials they connect. Equipment with bearings or bushings used in moving joints should be easy to lubricate or be self-lubricating. Self-lubricating bushings are designed to wear out and should be regularly inspected and replaced. Slides must be checked to make certain that slide chutes and slide walls are smooth and free from debris. The slide transition and chute must be free from entanglement hazards. On swings, inspect that swing chains or cables are not twisted and are free from excessive wear. All fasteners should be closed so that the opening is less than 0.04 inches. Check the swing seats are smooth, in good condition, and free from cuts or tears. Use zones are defined by ASTM as the area beneath and immediately adjacent to a play structure or equipment that is designated for unrestricted circulation around the equipment, and on whose surface it is predicted that the user would land when falling or exiting the equipment. The minimum use zone on any piece of elevated equipment is 72 inches. For moving equipment, remember the rules for non-overlapping use zone. Motion area of vertical rotating equipment with radius greater than 20 inches. Motion area of swings. Standing rocking equipment. Exit region of slides. All playground equipment must have impact attenuating protective surfacing under and around it. Unacceptable playground surfaces include grass, packed earth, asphalt, concrete, and other hard surfaces. Check for required signs and labels. Location of signs and labels is important. Signs and labels must alert the viewer to potential hazards in time to take appropriate action. On behalf of the National Recreation and Parks Association Certified Playground Safety Inspector Program, we thank you for your efforts and dedication in leading the way towards safety on our playgrounds. For additional information on the Certified Playground Safety Inspectors Program, contact the National Recreation and Parks Association at www.nrpa.org/CPSI.